Hi, this is my analysis of the Democratic Candidate Forum on MSNBC. I've been doing some of these analyses and the people like them, so maybe I can offer some ideas. Maybe you won't even have to watch it. This was really not a debate, as you got tipped off by the name Forum. So here, what we really had was just some interviews. These candidates might as well have been on Rachel Maddow's show, and probably she would have interviewed them a little bit more forcefully and aggressively. I think she was intimidated by the crowd and by being a Democratic representative. Anyway, it's all about promoting the candidates, especially the candidate that they want to coronate, which is Hillary Clinton. And so she got last licks, and the questions to her were very tame. And so you have the same themes as you have always with the previous Democratic candidate debate, where all of these people agree basically on minimum wage, affirmative action, redistribution of wealth, climate change. Now, I'll go into some of the variations and subtleties. Anyway, so let's focus on the principles. First, O'Malley was the only guy who mentioned principles, but then he didn't explain. He said he referred to principles of leadership, but he didn't mention any. And of course, they never do. They never explain the principle that they're going to use. They never explain what it means and how it would be applied. So I'll have to do the discovery of what the principles are by them being implicit in their statements. First of all, regarding redistribution of wealth, they all agree on redistribution of wealth because they don't agree with the fundamental value of property rights, the idea that the person producing the property is the owner of the property. They all think that the collective, the society, owns the property to some extent and therefore has the right to redistribute it. And therefore, Bernie Sanders will complain that this is a government for the billionaires. Why? Well, it's evident. They're getting most of the money. And since the money belongs to everyone, then it's totally unfair. And why would anybody vote for a government like that? They must be misguided. And if you know anything about how many billionaires there are in our country, it's a fraction of 1%. So this is an outlandish statement by him that the government is for the billionaires. They could never get the votes, no matter how much demagoguing and promoting they did. So what's going on here? People are ignoring the basic fact that redistribution of wealth is morally wrong because it implies the initiation of physical force against people who haven't violated anybody's rights. Because the person who produces the property in a capitalist constitutional republic society is the person who owns the property, and they have the right to decide how to use and dispose of the property, not the government. And that's the basic difference between socialism and capitalism, and all these Democratic candidates line up with socialism. So that explains basically why they have a difference of opinion. Now, I wanted to say something about the difference of approach between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. The Democrats, as you might have noticed, are doing no debates on Fox. Why? Because they know that the people on Fox may, because some of them aren't, but may be philosophically against them. They may be for capitalism. They may be against socialism. And so they don't want to take any questions from anyone who disagrees. And this is typical in Democratic debates and discussions. So the Republicans, on the other hand, are willing to walk into a so-called debate where it's all about destroying the candidates. This forum is about promoting the candidates. It's not a debate in any sense. The candidates can't ask each other questions. They can't bring up the issues. They can't even talk to each other. They're not even interviewed at the same time to make sure that they don't go at each other, or they don't ask for explanations of flip-flops or the premises that the other candidate has to support his position and the differences. None of that's done. And Rachel Maddow, who is usually a pretty aggressive and policy wonk interviewer and can really put the screws to you if she wants to, was very tame, very nice, very friendly, just looking for the acclaim of the group. And so that's what you got. So in that sense, you really didn't miss anything. You can just watch the Rachel Maddow show and you got probably even better. So that's a big contrast between the way the two parties are handling these debates. And it shows you that the Democratic Party is really afraid to have their candidates interviewed by somebody who disagrees with them. And maybe with some reason, because judging from what's happened when the Republican Party candidates went into a debate with somebody who disagrees with them philosophically and is really a socialist or whatever, they got a lot of innuendo and insults and underhanded comments. And so this was just like a love fest. It's an interesting contrast between these two so-called debates. At least they called it a forum. They didn't really call it a debate, because of course it really wasn't. So what are the other things to differentiate these two parties that you could see as a result of this forum? Well, one of them is identity politics. Now, identity politics is a fundamental difference in perspective, where the Democrats see people as members of a particular group, like blacks or gays or poor or billionaires or whatever. They don't see them as citizens of the United States that should be treated equally under the law. But our country is based on the principle of equality under the law, not on identity politics. And then one of the big problems with this is that when immigrants come to America, they quickly realize that the only way to have some kind of power is to form their own special interest group or power group. So you have the Latinos, and then they're supposed to have certain special interests that the government has to attend to them. So really, that's a big difference between the two parties. The Democratic Party is all about identity politics, about making a coalition of special interest groups or different racial groups or whatever, and getting a majority. They don't view the citizens as independent Americans, equal under the law, where calling them blacks or gays or whatever is superfluous and irrelevant. That's a big difference. Now, another big difference is that in the Republican Party, people generally agree that each citizen, each individual is responsible for himself. Personal responsibility. The Democrats, when she is asked, like Hillary Clinton is asked, why is there so much violence? And they rightfully included gang violence and then the other pet topic, police violence. Well, but let's talk about the gang violence. She says she doesn't know. She doesn't know why there is so much violence in the black community, why the life is so insecure in the ghettos, why there's so many crimes, why so many blacks are killed by other blacks in their own community. She doesn't know. But this is her approach. She says, we have to do a better job. So it's our fault that they are behaving like that. So it's not the individual's fault that he's a criminal. It's not the individual's fault that he's a thief or that he's a murderer or whatever. It's not his fault. It's not his fault that he's irresponsible, that he doesn't take care of his family or doesn't raise his kids or doesn't support his kids or beats his wife or whatever, it's somebody else's. We have to do a better job. But guess what? We cannot do anything about what other people decide to do in life. You know why? Because we are free and so are they, and we don't control their actions. Each human being controls his own actions and therefore, logically, should be responsible for his own actions. It's not that we're not doing enough to take care of them. That's the whole difference of approach, and you can see it in her answer. Now, Hillary Clinton flip-flopped even on her personality. She says it's an introvert and an extrovert. But Rachel Maddow didn't go after her flip-flops, except for one thing which is, of course, dear to her heart, which is Hillary's flip-flop on gay marriage, which she finally came along. But she did it very tenuously, very indirectly. You could hardly tell. Or now, was there any discussion of Hillary's emails? Oh, no, not at all. Not a single question about that hot topic. Anyway, you didn't really miss too much. If you understand the Democratic Party, you understand what's going on, you know what they believe. Like one thing that you might know already is that Bernie Sanders thinks that climate change is the biggest danger to America that America is facing. And of course, they all agreed with the Keystone Pipeline denial, whereas it's just absurd that because they think that that's going to increase the temperature of the world by building this pipeline. Anyway, watch a few of my interviews on climate change. I did one on Obama's new public policy on climate change. That should dispel all these arguments against climate change. I've done a lot of interviews on the ridiculousness of raising the minimum wage. Bernie Sanders wants to raise it to $15. That's absurd. That would just increase unemployment and make the cost of living go up and be a disaster for the economy. And affirmative action, I've done a lot of these interviews about the ridiculousness and the irrationality of affirmative action. Like one of our justices said, the way to get rid of racial discrimination is to get rid of racial discrimination. So all these things were really not examined, and you really can't get into the reasoning that supports their positions, and you really didn't see much new. So give me your thoughts, if you have any, on this so-called forum or debate, which of course it was not.